This is Bone Chillers to disturb your dreams. Dare to join us? Click subscribe, ring the bell. But remember, we cannot guarantee your safety from the nightmares that await. Prepare to be thrilled, chilled, and filled with a sense of dread you'll find nowhere else. Welcome to the darkness. We've been waiting.
Title: Oh, Don't Run. He's friendly. In the quiet town of Kingsley, where nothing of consequence usually happened, Olivia Hawthorne was an oddity. She was a quiet, introverted schoolgirl, more at home in the dusty corners of libraries than in lively classrooms or noisy playgrounds. With her nose always buried in a book, she was the perfect target for bullies. One late afternoon, after another trying day at school, Olivia took her usual detour through the forest on her way home. This time, she discovered something unusual, an ancient, oddly inscribed stone artifact. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands, examining the strange symbols etched into the stone. As she traced the symbols with her finger, they began to glow ominously. Suddenly, the world around her morphed into an eerie dark void, and she found herself face to face with a horrifying entity. It was a monstrous creature, formed from the shadowy ether, with glowing red eyes that bore into her soul. Olivia, though frightened, felt an odd sense of power. The beast, she realized, was bound to her will. The next day, confronted by her tormentors in school, she decided to test her newfound power. Whispering a phrase she recalled from the artifact, the entity appeared. The bullies recoiled in terror as the beast roared and lunged at them. Scattering like leaves in the wind, they fled, leaving Olivia standing alone. The entity disappeared, leaving a satisfied grin on her face. But the taste of power was intoxicating, and Olivia quickly found herself using her supernatural protector for more than just fending off bullies. She made the creature bring her things she desired, punish those who angered her, even manipulate her grades. Olivia was becoming the monster that she had once feared. Her classmates grew terrified, whispers of a dark force circulating through the school. Olivia reveled in their fear, the entity ever ready to enforce her will. She was no longer the awkward, lonely girl. She was powerful, but power, as Olivia would soon learn, has a price. One night, alone in her room, she looked in the mirror. Instead of her reflection, she saw the beast staring back. She screamed, but when she did, it was the monster's terrible roar that echoed back. Her eyes, once bright, were now an ominous red. Olivia had become the beast. Horrified, she ran to her mother, begging for help. But her mother only screamed at the sight of her, scrambling away. Olivia saw the terror in her eyes, the same terror she'd relished causing in others. Desperate, she summoned the beast, begging it to fix what had happened. But the beast simply stared at her, its red eyes gleaming with malicious delight. "I am but a reflection of your will," it rasped, its voice a haunting echo of her own. "You have become what you have chosen to be." In her desperation, Olivia returned to the forest, clutching the artifact. She tried to reverse the summoning, but the symbols remained dormant under her touch. Falling to her knees, she wept, the monstrous roar of her sorrow echoing through the night. In the days that followed, Olivia was hunted by the townsfolk, forced into hiding in the depths of the forest. Her story became a chilling legend of a girl who summoned a monster and became one herself. Her name became synonymous with fear, a cautionary tale of the dangers of power uncontrolled. But the true horror, for Olivia, was not the beast itself. It was the realization that she, a timid, introverted girl, had the capacity to become a monster. The beast was just a mirror, reflecting her inner monstrosity. She had become the architect of her own nightmare, the puppeteer of her own downfall. Power had transformed her, not into a hero or a champion, but into a creature of horror. She was left to grapple with her own reflection, a painful reminder of her unchecked desire for control, her monstrous capacity for revenge, and the terror she could inflict. Thus ends the tragic tale of Olivia Hawthorne, a girl who once sought refuge in books, lost in the monstrous mire of her own making. A haunting echo of humanity's capacity for darkness, a chilling testimony to the corruptive nature of power, and a grim reminder that often, the real monster lies within. Brotherly bond, quantum quandary. In the labyrinthine halls of the Corvinus Institute, Professor Gregory van der Lok was notorious for his unorthodox ideas. A virtuoso in quantum physics, his single-minded pursuit had always been clear teleportation. Lending a hand in his experiments was his younger brother, Richard, who had an innate understanding of the quantum realm that complemented Gregory's theoretical genius. They had commenced minor teleportation trials, successfully transporting an apple, a mouse, and even Richard's Siamese cat, Schrödinger. High on initial victories, the brothers decided to attempt the unthinkable, human teleportation. "We've done our due diligence," Gregory had proclaimed, his eyes glinting with anticipation. "Now, it's your turn." Richard, loyal and fearless, had willingly stepped into the experimental chamber. Then, disaster struck. The test tube housing Richard hummed violently as atoms dispersed erratically, disintegrating him into particles dispersed across the quantum realm. A sense of gut-wrenching horror gripped Gregory as the chamber fell silent, devoid of his brother. The grief was immense, but the nightmare had only just begun. One eerie morning, a week after Richard's disintegration, Gregory awoke to a hideous sight. He was horrified to find a monstrous arm, bearing a semblance to Richard's, hovering over his bed. Disconnected from any body, it twitched violently, thumping against the headboard. Gregory, alarmed and disturbed, quickly realized the enormity of the quantum disarray. His experiment hadn't annihilated Richard, but had fractured him across the quantum field. The teleportation had fragmented Richard's existence into multiple aberrations, which were now beginning to manifest in the physical world. The manifestations multiplied, each more grotesque than the last. A malformed face appeared in the Institute's cafeteria, moaning pitifully for food. A giant foot stomped across the physics lab, leaving a trail of destruction. Each manifestation bore a taint of Richard's former self, causing a wave of terror across the Institute. Guilt-ridden and desperate, Gregory knew he had to reassemble his brother. He needed to reverse the teleportation. If he failed, the fragments would continue to emerge, causing havoc and perhaps endangering lives. His colleagues cautioned against it, dubbing it a quantum quandary. They pleaded with him to end the experiment and purge Richard's monstrous forms from existence. But Gregory could not abandon his brother to such a terrifying fate. Thus, began a daunting race against time. Gregory spent days and nights immersed in complex quantum equations, fueled by coffee and anxiety. Every roar, shriek, or whimper from Richard's monstrous forms was a reminder of his monumental task and his brother's suffering. He deciphered the quantum pattern of Richard's dispersal and invented a contraption he named the quantum anchor. Its purpose was to realign Richard's scattered existence by drawing and bonding all his fragments together, effectively reversing the teleportation. He activated it, crossing his fingers and praying to any deity who'd listen. At first, it was chaos. The monstrous forms converged, their roars echoing through the Institute. They thrashed and contorted in a terrifying spectacle. But then, gradually, their monstrous qualities started to dissolve, replaced by a more recognizable, human form. Days passed before the Institute's hallways fell silent. Gregory, haggard but hopeful, ventured into the chamber, eyes straining against the brilliant light emitted by the quantum anchor. In the heart of the illumination, a human figure slowly solidified. Richard was whole again. But he was not the same. His eyes held a deep, unknowable sadness, his body scarred by quantum burns. "I'm sorry, Richard," Gregory whispered, his voice choked with relief and guilt. His brother was back, but at what cost? Richard didn't respond but reached out to touch Gregory's face, his hand steady and unmistakably human. It was a reassurance, a promise, and a plea for absolution. The brothers embraced in the eerie quiet of the chamber, united once more. The Van der Lok brothers had faced the quantum quandary and lived to tell the tale. The Institute hailed Gregory a hero, but he was haunted by the monstrous memories of his brother. The weight of his guilt served as a reminder of the horror that curiosity could unleash when pushed beyond ethical boundaries. From then on, Gregory dedicated his life to mending his brotherly bond. The teleportation experiment was buried deep in the annals of the Corvinus Institute, serving as a cautionary tale for anyone daring enough to challenge the uncharted territories of the quantum realm. The horror they had endured was a testament to their brotherly bond, a bond that defied scientific logic and the unimaginable chaos of the quantum realm. The symbiote. The quiet hum of machinery filled the cavernous lab, where Max worked alongside his father, renowned geneticist Dr. Isaac Mitchell. At the tender age of 12, Max's intellect rivaled those twice his age, making him an invaluable asset in their clandestine biotech facility. One day, while investigating a malfunctioning incubator, Max stumbled upon a fleshy, reddish organism, roughly the size of his palm. The organism pulsed and twitched, reacting to the heat of Max's skin. As he extended his fingers, it latched onto his hand. Startled, Max tried to shake it off, but the creature seemed to bond with him, merging with his skin until it was a part of him. An unusual sensation coursed through his veins, and Max found himself feeling stronger, sharper. Days turned into weeks as Max explored these new abilities. His stamina improved, his senses sharpened, and he could manipulate the organism to create thin tendrils or solid shields. It was extraordinary, but the closer Max became with the organism, the more he began to understand its true intentions. One night, Max was jolted awake by a torrent of alien thoughts and images. He saw the organism's homeworld, a desolate, red desert scattered with remnants of a lost civilization. There was a desperate need to survive, to propagate, and to dominate. A horrifying realization dawned upon Max: the organism was a sentient alien entity that used host bodies to reproduce. The next day, Max uncovered the organism's initial contact with Earth in the lab's classified archives. It had come from an asteroid sample retrieved by a space probe. Under scrutiny, the organism had proven to be a radical discovery in biotechnology. Its extraordinary healing properties and adaptability made it the ideal test subject. The scientists, including Max's father, had planned to develop this organism into a revolutionary medicinal tool, oblivious of its true nature. Max confronted his father with the truth. Isaac, struggling to accept his son's claims, put Max under surveillance, hoping to understand the organism better. Meanwhile, Max struggled to maintain control as the symbiote tried to overpower his will, using his body to reproduce and infect others. One fateful afternoon, as Max sat in the lab under his father's watchful eyes, he felt the organism surge within him. He writhed on the floor, clutching his chest, feeling the symbiote attempt to release its spores into the lab. Thinking quickly, Max used his newfound abilities to seal the room, generating a shield with the symbiote to contain the spores. But the creature was stronger than he anticipated, and it fought back, using Max's energy against him. Just when it seemed the symbiote would win, a sudden wave of cold washed over Max. Isaac had doused the room with liquid nitrogen, chilling the symbiote enough to pause its assault. Max seized the opportunity to retract the organism back into himself, forcing it into dormancy with sheer mental will. Max and his father worked tirelessly to find a way to extract the symbiote safely. As weeks turned into months, Max's control over the entity gradually strengthened. With his father's guidance, they developed a device to extricate the symbiote without causing harm to the host. In a grueling process that pushed Max's mental and physical strength to the brink, they successfully removed the symbiote from his body. It was immediately sealed in a high-security containment unit. However, the scars it left behind, both mental and physical, would stay with Max forever. The terrifying encounter with the alien organism taught Max a critical lesson about the potential dangers of scientific discovery. The knowledge he had gained was invaluable but came at a tremendous personal cost. Despite everything, Max found himself more committed than ever to his work, now aware of the caution he had to exercise. Their secret lab had once teemed with boundless excitement for the future of biotechnology. Now, it served as a stark reminder that even the most revolutionary breakthroughs could harbor unknown horrors. In the wrong hands, or without the necessary understanding, such discoveries could threaten the very existence of mankind. Max looked at the containment unit holding the symbiote one last time. It pulsed quietly, unaware of its failed invasion. For Max, it symbolized the terrible beauty of life, its adaptability, its instinct to survive at any cost, and its horrifying potential when it crossed the boundaries of worlds.
The Skinwalker's claim. I'm Elijah, just a simple rancher who always found beauty in the vast expanse of land that's been in my family for generations. Life was straightforward, cattle during the day, family at night. But that tranquility ended when Rosalind disappeared. It began with a series of brutal cattle mutilations. Cows were torn apart, bones crushed as if by some monstrous force. Then, Rosalind, my eldest, vanished without a trace. A chilling emptiness filled the ranch, a sense of loss that words cannot describe. Rumors began to circulate in town about a skinwalker, a malicious spirit able to take any form. Some blamed me for my skepticism, but I'm a man of facts, not folklore. However, desperation took hold as Rosalind's absence extended. When the outcast tribal elder, Ahote, approached me with talk of the skinwalker, I swallowed my disbelief and listened. Ahote was an intriguing man, hardened by life's trials and adorned with tribal tattoos. He claimed he could guide me to reclaim my daughter and rid our land of the skinwalker at the price of confronting my deepest fears. What must I do? I asked him one starless night as we sat in my gloomy living room. Face it, Ahote replied, his eyes like two embers in the dark. Face it, challenge it, and demand your daughter back. Only pure, unwavering will can deter the skinwalker. The following days were grueling as Ahote put me through trials, teaching me tribal chants and rituals, pushing my body and spirit to the brink. I endured, clinging on to the thought of Rosalind. Late one evening, under a moon as sharp as a cleaver's edge, Ahote announced, "It is time." We traveled deep into the prairie. Ahote led me to a secluded grove where he began to chant. The air vibrated, a strange energy curling around us. Then, out of the darkness, it appeared, the skinwalker. It was a grotesque blend of beast and man, massive, standing on two legs. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light, and its guttural growl echoed in the stillness. I trembled, feeling the bone-deep terror it inspired. Ahote stood beside me, stoic, his voice a steady rhythm against my panic. "Face it, Elijah," he said. "You are the wall between it and your family." Summoning my courage, I stepped forward, reciting the tribal chant Ahote had drummed into me. The skinwalker snarled, a terrible sound that rattled my resolve. I wavered, but stood my ground. "Rosalind," I yelled into the dark, "I demand you back." The skinwalker recoiled, the air around it wavering, and for a brief moment, I saw a familiar silhouette form, Rosalind, but it quickly morphed back into the monstrous figure. It was playing with me, taunting me. Anger surged within me, overpowering my fear. I said, "Give me back my daughter." I roared, stepping closer. The skinwalker shrieked, a horrifying sound that seemed to claw at the night itself. It lunged at me, but I did not flinch. I stood tall, firm in my demand. Then, as if an invisible barrier had struck it, it recoiled, screaming in rage and apparent pain. Slowly, its form began to waver, twisting and contorting, and from its throes, Rosalind emerged. She fell to the ground, unconscious but alive. The beast, once towering and intimidating, diminished, slinking into the shadows as it let out a pained growl, leaving behind only the echo of its existence. Tears streamed down my face as I rushed to my daughter, pulling her close. Ahote approached, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You have reclaimed your daughter and your land, Elijah. You've proven the strength of your will. But remember, fear can invite it back," he warned. I nodded, holding Rosalind tighter, promising never to let fear rule me again. From that day on, the ranch regained its peace, the brutal mutilations stopped, and no trace of the skinwalker remained. As for me, Elijah, a humble rancher, my mundane life was no more. I had faced the unknown, conquered my fears, and protected my family, forever marking the skinwalker's claim as nothing but a grim reminder of the courage it takes to defy the darkness and reclaim what is rightfully ours.
Hourglass Horror. Under a sky weighed down by charcoal clouds, the house on Silver Spruce Lane, once a charming two-story Victorian, now loomed with a ghostly malevolence. Jacob and Rebecca Graham, oblivious to the house's sinister essence, excitedly stepped over its threshold, eager to start their new life together. Upon their arrival, the house was eerily silent, seemingly holding its breath. As they moved from room to room, Jacob felt a peculiar sensation, a tickling under his skin, like the stirring of 1,000 invisible ants. He dismissed it as nerves. The same couldn't be said for Rebecca, who noticed the fine wrinkles etching themselves into the skin of her hands. Over the first week, the silent decay continued. Rebecca's youthful glow vanished into wrinkled lines, while Jacob's thick hair thinned and whitened. Their strength waned, their vitality sapped. Time, it seemed, ran faster inside the house, stealing their life force to feed an insatiable hunger. The realization struck Jacob one evening when he glimpsed their reflection in the mirror. His heart sank at the sight of their prematurely aged faces. Their home was not just a house, but a monstrous entity, the wraith of moments, feasting on their time. Determined to reclaim their lives, Jacob and Rebecca began researching the house's history. They discovered the initial blueprints, tucked away in the local library's archives, bore riddles etched into its structure, offering clues to unraveling the wraith's temporal anomaly. The first riddle, hidden in the fireplace's bricks, read, "Where dawn meets dusk, and old meets young, a secret hides beneath the tongue." Jacob and Rebecca deciphered it, finding a hidden mechanism in the wooden mantelpiece. When turned at sunrise and sunset, it unveiled a hidden room filled with hourglasses of all sizes. The sand within each flowed, not bottom to top, but in a mysterious, endless loop. The second riddle, scrawled in the cellar's dust, declared, "Time is fluid, yet often it stands still. Find where it pools, and you'll have your fill." As Rebecca mused over the words, she noticed the wine rack, its bottles filled with dust instead of vintage. Each bottle represented a year. When placed in chronological order, the wine rack clicked and sunk into the floor, revealing a hidden passage. Through the passage, they found a chamber. In its center was an enormous hourglass, its sands swirling erratically, each grain an instance of time devoured. Above it, an inscription read, "To regain your stolen moments, you must feed the beast its own." Understanding dawned on them. They had to reverse the hourglass, feeding the wraith its devoured moments. Mustering their remaining strength, Jacob and Rebecca pushed against the enormous hourglass. As it flipped, time seemed to hold its breath. The hourglass shuddered, and then the sands began to stream upwards. The house trembled. The walls moaned as if in pain, the air tinged with an electric charge. As the last grain of sand fell upwards, a wailing echoed through the house. Then, a sudden silence descended. Jacob and Rebecca stumbled out of the room, their bodies aching. The house felt different, quiet, but not with a malevolent silence. It was a peace, a stillness that it had not known for centuries. In the reflection of a dusty window, they saw their youth returning. Wrinkles smoothed, white hairs darkened, and vitality flooded their bodies. The wraith of moments had been vanquished, its temporal feast reversed. The house on Silver Spruce Lane still stood, but it was no longer a monstrous entity. Its walls no longer devoured time, but sheltered and warmed. The riddles etched in its architecture had been solved, the temporal anomaly unraveled. From that day on, it was just a house, no longer a wraith but a sanctuary. As Jacob and Rebecca aged, they did so naturally, each wrinkle and grey hair earned through years of joy, sorrow, and love. The house, now a beacon of hope rather than horror, became a testament to their triumph over the hourglass horror. The Wraith of Moments, now nothing more than a ghost story, was a chilling reminder of the time when their home had been their greatest enemy.
Thank you for watching, and remember, the darkness awaits. Until our paths cross again, stay fearful and stay subscribed.